Item number 13, an ordinance recognizing revenue in the amount of $1,000 in the Animal Shelter Grant Fund 3515 and appropriating $1,000 from the Animal Shelter Grant Fund to the Animal Shelter Grant budget for 2021. Our animal shelter was awarded a local grant of $1,000 from the Best Friends Animal Society for participating in its PAW Coalition meeting. This is accepting those funds and moving them over to the grant fund budget. Any discussions or motions with regard to item number 13?
Move be passed on to the full quorum court.
I have a motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Usry, second by J.P. Simons. Any further discussion or questions? Any public comment? Voting on item number 13, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Item number 13 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item number 14, an ordinance recognizing revenue in the amount of $5,000 in the Animal Shelter Grant Fund and appropriating $5,000 from the Animal Shelter Grant Fund to the Animal Shelter Grant Fund budget for 2021. The animal shelter was awarded a medical rehabilitation grant of $5,000 from the Best Friends Animal Society. This is us accepting those dollars and moving them to the animal shelter budget for 2021. Any discussion or motions with regard to this item? I have a motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Simons. I have a second by J.P. Duncan. Any further discussion or questions? Any public comment? Voting on item number 14. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Item number 14 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. All right, item number 15 is an item that we must pass every year. It's an ordinance levying the county, municipal, and school district taxes for 2021. Before we begin discussion or motions, I do have an amendment we need to make to this. Looking at Article 3, the Prairie Grove number 23 mills need to be moved from 17.9 to 17.5. And in the third column, it needs to be moved from 42.9 to 42.5. Do I have a second to make that amendment? Second. I have a second by J.P. Wilson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Item number 15 is amended. Any further questions or discussions? Any motions? I have a motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Wilson.
Second.
Second by J.P. Duncan. Any further discussion? Any public comment? Voting on item number 15. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Item number 15 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item number 16, an ordinance appropriating $4,843,541.07 from the American Rescue Plan Act Fund to various line items in the budget for 2021. In introduction to this ordinance, we've been offering bonuses and rewards to our county employees who have worked through the pandemic. Along with that, of course, we hear from all of our elected officials that our number one asset in the county are our county employees. So after taking care of what I felt like were the most critical employees in terms of their risk during the pandemic, started working with the judge's office and Chief of Staff Brian Lester, and we have come up with an ordinance to offer bonuses for our 600 and plus county employees countywide. and this is what this comes down to. This is what's memorialized in this ordinance. So, as you can see, the last whereas, it offers $3 per hour for retroactive pay for all essential employees during a time period. I will need to make an amendment to those dates. That was brought to us by the comptroller's office. But a couple comments to this. This is a bonus that will be available to county employees who were working in person during the pandemic, those are guidelines set out by the American Rescue Plan Fund. And, I'll say that when you start working on this at the granular level, it's $1 amount. But when you start looking at it from the gross amount, as you add all this up, the sticker gets really big, the price tag gets really big. And so I was myself concerned about that. But, the comment I'll have about this is $4.8 million is roughly 10% of our total ARPA money that we'll receive in total. And I'm wondering, that to me seems like a good investment into our county employees to use 10% of that money for the people who showed up and worked through the pandemic. I'll also note that, this is a tool for the elected officials, hopefully, to help retention in all of our departments that we've seen so much need in those areas in terms of retention. And, this follows up. I'd like to remind everybody, in our budget controls written up this year, we've made I would consider them some huge investments in our employees. We've moved up all the salary ranges and pay grades 10%. We're outside of this particular ordinance, we're going to do 3.5% raises. So, I have a lot of conversations with department heads and employees, and what I say is we're here to help. We're trying. We're moving. I know we move slow. That's just kind of the nature of the beast, but I hope that this will certainly help thank all of our hardworking county employees who showed up during the pandemic. And with that, I'll turn it over to discussion or questions. J.P. Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You may have stated that, but is this only for people who are still employed with us? In other words, if they work during that time but have left, they would not be eligible. Is that correct?
That's correct. They would have to be current employees.
And is this does it apply to people who have already received some form of compensation for working during the COVID situation?
Yes.
So it's for those people, it will be additional compensation.
It will be an additional
Okay.
compensation, and that is by design. Up for questions and debate, but I believe that the bonuses that we've already given were in line with an increased risk that those individuals were exposed to during their working conditions during the pandemic. Any other questions? J.P. Madison?
Who is it leaving out? I mean, if it's only the people that came to work, who's not getting it?
If you worked from home or any period of time, you may have been hybrid. You may have worked from home part of this time. You would not be eligible to receive the bonus for those hours that you worked from home or remotely out of the office.
Well,
and that's not a county guideline. That's American Rescue Plan guideline.
Well, I understand that, but as someone whose child was at home, I had no choice but to work at home and work remotely. And so while I think that certainly those who physically came into work are entitled to recognition for that, to say that they were the only ones that suffered and had difficult circumstances during the pandemic is not accurate, because people whose children, daycares were closed, schools were shut down, they had to stay home. To say that they're not worthy of getting pay, I think is, or someone who has a health issue, has a health condition that had to stay home. It troubles me that we're saying that some people did more than others, when really the whole philosophy of the pandemic is that we're in this together, and that the people who stayed home, I mean, let me tell you, doing a deposition while your kid is running around and a dog is barking is just as stressful as trying to come to work and wear a mask and be behind a plastic shield. So it as much as I want to recognize our county employees, it troubles me that we're sectioning off some and saying you don't deserve this because you had to stay at home when the schools closed and work remotely. If I were a county employee, and that was my circumstance, I would be really trying to reevaluate if I'm truly valued by the county or not. And I think if we can't figure out a way to give everyone this pay, then I don't know, that's very troublesome. And I know there's a lot of people here tonight to talk about this. I think that's why we have a crowd. I don't like this line we're drawing. If that's great, if it's a line that the American Rescue Plan says, but if we're talking about what this county's priorities are, it's every employee. And if we can't pay to give every employee this bonus because the pandemic has been hard on all of them, then we need to go back and start over.
Well, I have to respond, and I have to draw a clear line. It's not we that is drawing the line. We have to operate within the parameters that were set out and passed by Congress and the Biden administration on this. And so I fully understand your frustration, and I value every one of our county employees too, but I believe that the complaint at that level would have to go to our congressman. I mean, it's not up to me to dictate. This ordinance was drafted and written within the parameters that were set out in the American Rescue Plan. J.P. Duncan.
I move passage of item number 16.
I have a motion to pass item number 16 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Duncan, a second by J.P. Wilson. I will follow up with comments. J.P. Ecke?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to say to all of you guys sitting out there that we do appreciate you, we do value you, and those of you that did go out and work, y'all are going to get compensated for it, and I'm excited about that. For those who stayed at home, they're going to get a 10% increase in their pay because we worked hard. It's been since 2016 that we've been able to move the structure up, and we finally did it because we were united in thought and purpose, and our thought was you. You all do 100% of the job, and you all need to be compensated for it, and we've worked hard to move it in that direction. I'm excited for what's coming down. I'm excited for what the pay that y'all are going to get, but it's like Ms. Heyer says when she was in the school system, those that showed up at the school should get more money than those that stayed at home. Not that they are devalued any less, but you all that went out there, we appreciate it and we appreciate you. And that's all I have to say about that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, J.P. Ecke. J.P. Madison, do you have a follow-up?
I'm curious how we are deciding who stayed home and who didn't, and who decides that, and how we are tracking that. And if we've obviously made that determination because we know how much it costs. So I'm curious, the line we've drawn, how are we deciding, okay, in the assessor's office, these 12 people get it, these 4 don't. And then have we made any assessment of what it would cost with that CARES money we squirreled away to give it to everyone? I mean, to say that we can't do it because ARPA doesn't allow it is disingenuous because we can do it. We just put $14 million into reserves. So, but we know who's in and who's out, and I'm curious how we made that decision and who made that decision.
Counselor Harlan, would you like to take up that particular? Push the little man on the microphone, would you?
J.P. Madison, so the determination was made by the comptroller's office. And to be clear, just because someone teleworked doesn't mean that they receive no premium pay, right? It's just that it's going to be proportional to their physical presence as required by ARPA. What the comptroller's office did was they reached out to each elected official and department head and then asked for self-reporting based on how much telework occurred in each office, because only they have the knowledge of how they interacted in the pandemic. Like some were afforded the opportunity to work remotely in a way that other departments weren't. So the way that number was derived was that the burden was placed on each elected and each department head to convene based off their records and in conjunction with talking to their workers and self-report how much do we need to reduce your reported hours from our payroll system based off of what you're telling us you telework, if that makes sense.
It does. And then is it just hourly employees?
No, ma'am. It's for every county employee regardless of employment status. It does exclude poll workers.
Is it elected officials?
No, ma'am. Some counties did do elected officials, but discussing with Brian and myself, I'm not sure that elected officials are eligible under ARPA to receive premium pay.
I think it might go against the line item max too that the state sets. I'm not sure, but are there going to be employees that get none?
I guess if there were, I can't speak to that because there's 600 plus employees, but I guess, yes, if there were employees that for the 18-month period worked teleremote the entire duration of that period, yes, they would not receive money under the ARPA. They wouldn't be eligible as a permissible use of those funds.
Okay, thanks.
I have failed to make the amendment that I needed to, so I make a motion right now. If you look at item number 15, line 55 of the original ordinance, the original dates read April 16th, 2020 through October 16th, 2021. That needs to be amended and replaced with April 20th, 2020 through October 17th through 2021. Do I have a second for that amendment?
Second.
Any discussion on that amendment? Voting on that amendment, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That amendment carries. So now back to the original motion. We had a motion to pass by J.P. Duncan, a second by J.P. Wilson. Any further discussion or questions? Any public comments?
Russell Hill, Washington County Assessor. We kept very thorough records of people we had some people who worked remotely from home. We had many that did not because they had children or they were at a certain age or they had different health issues. Those people were paid to stay home. And then we had the other group of folks who showed up to work and worked in what was a pretty congested area because we had moved everybody into the assessor's office and closed our doors. And so that's where it is. We have some people that worked remotely for 156 days, and we had some people that were there that missed 0 days. They were there the entire time. And so we kept a record of that entire thing, hoping that something like this would come along and then that we could be equitable in the way rewarding people by. And yes, some people had different situations. And the first and foremost, we wanted to protect our people from what at the time we didn't know what we were facing. And so it was a very scary time. And I sent an email out when this first happened in March, and I said, this is going to test every single one of us, and we're going to find out what we're all made of. And I hope that we all rise to the occasion. Let me tell you, the people, the employees, the workers of Washington County rose to the occasion. And we never closed a single day. We adjusted what we did. We got very innovative in how to serve the folks, but we never closed and stopped our services. Even with a reduced workforce, and it seemed like everybody was taking their stimulus money and purchasing a car because we saw a 26% increase in our work volume and personal property assessments and people assessing new vehicles that they had purchased. We saw a 26% increase while we're running at a very reduced group of folks, and our team rose to the occasion. I couldn't be more proud of what they did, and I think that has bonded us together as an office. We are working better than we have. It's really made us stronger. And on behalf of that, there's nothing like this. Nothing like this has ever been. They still talk about 10 years ago when the circuit clerk gave everybody a $600 bonus, and they still talk about that today. That was huge in their life. This is tremendous what could be done if this could happen. It would be very worthy. It would be duly noted and very appreciated on behalf of all the folks here, and it really would match up to what we say, and they are our most valuable resource. So I really encourage you. I love it. The people love it, and I hope you really consider this. Thank you.
Thank you, Assessor Hill.
Good evening. Matt Durrett with the Prosecutor's Office. I need to preface this by saying that I'm not speaking to the appropriate group right now, because I feel like the guy whose cable's messed up, and it keeps getting messed up, and all you can talk to is the people, whoever answers the phone at the cable company. You can't speak to the people who created the problem, because my problem was with the guidelines, the criteria. In fact, my opinion, the guidelines suck. The criteria suck because it doesn't recognize those individuals who were forced to stay at home and still continue to do their job. Because we had people who stayed at home, the vast majority of our office. When this thing started, the courthouse shut down and we sent people home. I have people who were immunocompromised, and I felt it was the best route. Protection was the best route, and we didn't skip a beat. It started off, I was answering telephones when it started off because I was determined that we were not going to deny the citizens of this county services. The phones were answered. Everything kept going on with the exception of our office being filled with individuals. And I think this penalizes them. And I understand that your hands are tied. I get that. And I don't want this to come across as me being an ingrate, because we are going to get, some of my employees are going to get a little bit of money for the time that they were in the office. And I'm grateful for everything that you all, on top of everything that you give our employees. I'm grateful for it. I don't want to sound like I'm not. And I don't want to sound like I'm criticizing you all. But this is important to me, and it's important to my office, and I think that a fuss needs to be kicked up, even though y'all aren't responsible for it. Nevertheless, I think if you ask law enforcement agencies, judges, the circuit clerk's office, they will all tell you that our employees are essential and do essential work. One thing I want to point out about how much our employees care about this county. When this all started and we thought that we were looking at a multi-million-dollar deficit, from a budgetary standpoint, county judge's office asked all of the elected officials to cut as much from their budget as possible. What I had my people do is cut their hours. So for 2+ months, they went working 35 hours a week. No overtime, no nothing. You could work 35 and that was it. I got 0 complaints from employees. In fact, I had several employees email me to thank me for saving their jobs as if I did something when I didn't do anything. I asked them to sacrifice, and they thanked me for asking them to sacrifice. That's just how important my employees are to me and how my office cannot function without my employees. So, once again, I appreciate everything you all are doing, and I think this is a fantastic ordinance because it helps out those who help all of us out. And I think that that's the least we can do is show them gratitude. I just want, if there's something else to show my folks that, their work has not gone unnoticed simply because they were not in their offices, physically in their offices. I just hope that there's something we can do to show them that their work has not gone unnoticed. So, once again, I understand where y'all are coming from, and I don't want this to come across as a criticism of you all, but this is important to me, and I think it needs to be said.
Thank you, Prosecutor Durrett.
Thank you.
Additional public comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. My name is Beth Koger. I live in Fayetteville, Arkansas. I've been listening to the comments, and For the people who really couldn't come to work, for whom it was too dangerous, I'd like to offer a solution to this committee. And that is that you take the money, pay them out, take that money out of general fund. We've heard tonight how much, we have plenty of money and our income is up. So why can't we take it out of general fund and make sure that everyone is recognized and appreciated? That's my suggestion. Thank you.
Additional public comments?
Hi, Sarah Moore, Fayetteville, Arkansas. I really appreciate this ordinance and recognizing staff, but I do also appreciate the hurdle that's been brought forward, and I hope that this body will get creative and figure out a solution how we can recognize those folks. What I wanted to draw our attention to, and there was some comments and conversation about it with the previous ordinance with J.P. Wilson, is about talking about how we spend the $23 million we have in the bank today, which is not $23 million anymore. It actually, if we pass this ordinance tonight, we will have spent 27% of the $23 million and be left with $16.7 million. Very quickly, just with 6 items that we will have paid for, we'll have spent 27% of what we have in the bank today for ARPA funds. We have yet to have, I understand county services had some conversation, but there has not been a full conversation like the county judge has talked about all the exhaustive needs that have happened from department heads and from the community so that we can prioritize how we spend this money. We see how quickly that money is spending, and so I really would like to ask that if we go forward with this ordinance tonight, that we don't spend any additional money going forward until we have that conversation and figure out, is it 10% that we need for the community needs? We don't know that because we haven't fully vetted out what the community needs are. So how can we actually lay a number out there today? I will tell you the need is great and there's urgency. We've had money in the bank since November of 20 with CARES money. That money has not been getting out to the community, and there is urgency to get it out there. And I appreciate the diligence that's been done to look at some processes, but I hope that this body will really take greater speed and urgency around that. But again, I want to go back and remind you, today we will only have $16.7 million. We've already gone forward with 2 ordinances that propose potentially with architectural services building buildings, and that money would be exhausted and then some. So I appreciate your consideration tonight of after this ordinance not passing any other monies until we have a full conversation. I additionally want to invite you all. Arkansas Justice Reform Coalition has been talking to the community. We'll be in Springdale with the Marshallese community in the Jones Center on Friday night from 6 to 8, and on Sunday with a Spanish language conversation at the Imperial Event Center on Sunday afternoon from 2 to 5:30. Thank you.
We have 3 minutes left. Additional public comments?
Good evening. My name is Monique Jones, and I am the Director of Outreach for St. James Missionary Baptist Church. Thank you, Chairman and the committee, for serving for us. St. James has been in existence since 1865. We celebrated 156 years anniversary this year. We've been serving this community since 2008 with a food pantry. We relocated in Willow Street in 2019 because we saw an increase in food insecurity in the Washington County area. Since that time, the food insecurity and hunger in our community has grown exponentially to the point that we regularly feed over 500 families each week, but upwards of 750 families from Springdale, Fayetteville, Farmington, Lincoln, and Prairie Grove. St. James distributed 4,337 pounds of food just today. St. James is also donating food to other food services in Washington County to minimize food waste. Our monthly cost for food has gone from 290% over since the pandemic. We spend an average of $2,500 to $3,500 a week on dry goods and food in order to serve Washington County families. St. James uses great care and best practice in which purchasing items for distribution to feed families. However, in its efforts to secure best practices in produce are limited because its existing refrigeration and freezer capacities are very limited in our capacity. St. James Pantry is located in the basement of our original church at 115 South Willow. This facility is in need of repairs and renovations in order to shelving, storage, including more refrigeration and freezer capacity, and to help with the flow of packaging food for distribution. The funding sought with help from St. James sustain and advance its work of providing food to hunger families, as food insecurity in the community has been exacerbated by this pandemic. I'd also like to share that we've showed up for the entire pandemic out of a labor of love for our community members with little to no support with administrative support, utilizing funds sometimes from our own pocket to deliver food to our community members. I also want to recognize our county employees that have helped to deliver food boxes each week, along with the Fayetteville Sheriff's Department, Fayetteville Police Department, and I'd also like to acknowledge that we have over 70 volunteers that have been there for 2 years since this pandemic, showing up every week to serve Washington County residents. One of our volunteers today had told me today she had open surgery.
Ms. Jones, that's
Yes.
time.
Okay.
I appreciate it. Any additional, oh, I'm sorry, public comment time has expired. We're going to bring back the question of item number 16. All those in favor? All those opposed? Item 16 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item 17. I was requested to put a discussion item on tonight's agenda. Item number 17 is discussion on funding increases for Ozark Regional Transit. Welcome.
You guys got your work cut out for you today. One of the things, I have been one who has studied CARES, HEROES, and ARPA, and I keep hearing the word bonus being thrown out there. ARPA does not like the word bonus. I believe in number 11, you guys had the word bonus printed in there, so I would ask that you take a look at that. But bonus is not a good thing for ARPA. So just keep that in mind when speaking and writing it. Ozark Regional Transit,
Why
ladies
don't
and
you
gentlemen.
start by introducing yourself? There
I'm
might
sorry.
be new people on the body who don't know who you are.
I'm sorry. I apologize. My name's Joel Gardner. I'm a resident of Springdale, Arkansas, and the director of Ozark Regional Transit. Real quick, about 18 years ago, Ozark Regional Transit was developed by the four judges of Washington, Madison, Carroll, and Benton County, and the four mayors of Springdale, Fayetteville, Rogers, and Bentonville. So I run for you your political subdivision of Ozark Regional Transit, which was brought together by the four counties and the four cities. So I work for you. And I like to say that because a lot of people say, Joel, your transit system. It is not my transit system. It is your transit system. Ozark Regional Transit is in its third year of bringing salaries up beyond what they were. With a $1 a year increase. We started out 3 years ago at $10.50 an hour starting wage. We're hoping to get all the way up to $13.50 this year. Just a point of interest, the federal poverty line is at $26,000, I believe, for 2021 and 2022, and at $13.50 an hour times the 2080 gets us right around the $26,000, $27,000 mark. So our starting drivers are right at poverty level, but we do provide them benefits, insurance, and a few other things. So Ozark Regional Transit in 2021 requested $22,970 from the county, which you provided. And to get this additional dollar, we're going to be asking for $28,747. It's roughly an increase of right around $6,000 for the year. This was something that we continue to provide demand response services throughout the county 2 days a week, and we're hoping that you guys move this forward for 2022. That's all, sir.
Thank you. Any discussion or questions for Mr. Gardner? JP Rio Stafford?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. While we have you here, I was
Yes, ma'am.
curious with the infrastructure bill that just passed, how you think that that might help or benefit ORT in the coming year.
Good question. ARPA, let's see. I got to go back a little bit. CARES helped us. HEROES failed us. ARPA screwed us. Because $2.2 billion was put out there for ARPA for public transit agencies, and the way the federal government works when it comes to federal transit, you got to be a legacy transit system to really get something. Legacy transit systems are East Coast, West Coast. They've forgotten about the other 460 transit agencies, so there was actually language written in there in ARPA that does not get us any money. Because just the way they write it. They write it so that you really have to be a multi-million-dollar transit agency to get any benefit from it. So when we looked at the $2.2 billion that was available, really about 14 to 17 transit agencies qualify throughout the U.S., and they're East Coasters and West Coasters. So I have no real hopes. Yes, ma'am. I'm being a realist. So.
JP Dennis.
Thank you. Again, I recognize that I'm not on the committee, but what about growth? I said to you as we walked in, I even thought about taking the bus to get to here because the price of gas is going so high. Are you growing quickly? Or is it growing faster? And if it grows faster, what are your needs? Because how can you operate more with less?
We never can operate more with less, sir. The growth plan, Ozark Regional Transit, along with Razorback Transit and the Northwest Arkansas Regional Planning Commission, finished the 10-year development plan about year and a half, 2 years ago. That 10-year development plan kind of took a stall because of COVID and everything else that went along with it. But the first thing that we need to do for us to grow is to realign our board, which we're doing right now. From that realignment, we're going to be looking at a growth model, and the growth model really has us going from the $3 million a year that we do now in services up to $22 to $25 million a year within the first 6 years, all the way up beyond $30 million a year after the 10 years. The only way to really grow transit is to get a tax out there. I'll say the T word, a tax has got to be out there for public transit to be invested into by the communities that it serves. I understand before I got here, there was an attempt to have some type of tax pushed through Washington County and Benton County. A bunch of the cities, it failed miserably. And what we're looking at is now, instead of attempting to do something as a whole, we're looking at possibly doing something as individual cities, focusing on the urban growth and development of the public transit system, connecting the two counties through a county-to-county connection, and seeing what we can do about going quarter-cent sales tax is what the 10-year development plan talks about. The great thing about us doing it, this, I'll call it cafeteria style, is that if one city doesn't want to do it and another does want to do it, then we focus all of our efforts into the city that does. In the best case scenario for this, when we get to that point, all four cities would say, let's do a quarter-cent sales tax. In a worst case scenario, all four cities would say, let's do a quarter-cent sales tax, because I will get my butt handed to me in the amount of work that I've got to do at that point in time. So. But we're poised and ready to grow. Yes, sir.
JP Simons.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Gardner.
Sir.
In terms of, you mentioned your entity was formed by the 4 counties?
4 counties,
and
4 cities. Yes, sir.
Of this 28,000, are you getting, is that Washington County's cut? Do you have asks out there for other counties and other cities? Are they contributing to this dollar as well? Or
you're going to get me ballparking, unless I brought my notes, which I think I brought my notes. City of Springdale, these are the 2022 asks. City of Springdale confirmed 414,160. City of Fayetteville 560,167. City of Bentonville 155,169. City of Rogers 465,160. City of Berryville 13,500. City of Centerton 2,500. City of Farmington 5,000. City of Prairie Grove 3,000. Maybe not I think we dropped City of Prairie Grove. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff. Benton County, we're asking the 22.9, Benton County, we asked for 22.970, but I believe they're going to settle on the 17.5. Didn't get the confirmation on that. And Carroll County, 1,500, and then Washington County will be asking the 28,747. Yes, sir.
Any other questions or discussion? Thanks, sir. Appreciate you coming.
Appreciate your time. Thank you for getting me in.
We will move to new item number 18, which was added, item 21R-10. Our own Sheriff Helder was part of a governor's task force that looked at how do we improve our law enforcement retention and compensation. Is Sheriff Helder still here this evening? Oh, I'm sorry. Missed you. But anyways, he asked that this resolution be put on here. I don't like adding things at the last minute, but this came in, and he seemed to think that this is going to go around statewide, and municipalities and counties are going to try to pass this in the month of November in part of one movement. Sheriff Helder, would you like to add any of your comments to this? Some background?
Great job as far as the introduction on this thing. This was kind of a threefold approach when it came to after we got through the process on the task force of how do we improve law enforcement, what are the additional trainings required, and all the things that we need to do more of. The group also talked about, well, how do we attract and retain the right folks to wear our uniforms and serve our public. So compensation, pay was obviously one of the ones, but that's a local issue statewide. Pension, retirement plans was another one. There's so many different pension plans, so we talked about parity, but that's a big issue. And then finally, one of the things that a lot of states do is a tax credit issue for certified law enforcement. There are many places that do it for firemen. I think currently in this state, Willie, isn't it, rural fire, volunteer firemen, do they receive a tax credit on some issues?
I've been trying to get them to do that for years, but I hadn't got it done
I
yet.
think it's already on the books, but I'm going to look into that for you. But then National Guard. At any rate, this was one of the recommendations. So now we've gotten to this point. There was members, they had a Back the Blue caucus, if you will, that met earlier in the year, and they were drumming up support for a variety of bills. Well, this is one that has ramped up to the point that the Association of Counties, Sheriff Association, Arkansas Municipal League, everybody are requesting our different governing bodies to develop a resolution to support the concept behind this, and then, of course, the sponsoring Senate and the House representative will present to the governor, and hopefully they'll get enough groundswell of support we can get some movement on this issue. So that's the crux of it. I'd appreciate your support on this so that we can move it forward and show Governor Hutchinson that we'd like some movement in this area.
J.P. Lemming.
Thank you. Sheriff, what or how can you change your retirement? Is that any way possible to go from go over to Lofty versus where you're at now? Is that any way possible?
Man, this meeting's gone pretty long. This is a long, probably a more involved answer. We may need to discuss this aside. But at any rate, I've been in the year of, since the conclusion of the task force of Chris Lyons, who's the director of ACC, and then Scott, and then he facilitated a meeting this past week between myself, a couple other board members, and Duncan Baird, the director of APERS, for this very discussion. Just how do we develop parity between LOPFI, APERS, you got the state police, there are just so many different ones. So I think the short answer is, Willie, that we had a great first discussion. There'll be follow-up meetings, but I think what we were trying to develop more than anything is probably not a move from APERS to LOPFI, but more of a recognition to set apart a bit so that the certified law enforcement would have a different look like the state police do. They're under the APRS umbrella, but they're kind of set apart. So I apologize. That's.
But there again, whenever we're saying that our officers are going to leave the county to go to Fayetteville, but if they're on a different retirement plan, that's going to still hurt you.
That's my conversation. It's just trying to find parity, and if there's a way to develop that under the APRS umbrella, great. I mean, but you can look at the numbers on the resolution at where we are nationwide, 49th average pay. Hey, you guys do a phenomenal job in Northwest Arkansas. That's not the big issue that I'm speaking to right now. This is statewide. There are a lot of departments that are minimum wage, so anyway, I think your help on this is going to be significant, so I appreciate your time.
J.P. Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I want to start off by saying that I do fully support this resolution, but line 67 does give me pause. It's saying that it uses the terminology back the blue, and I don't know if the court is aware of this, but that word in popular culture is offensive to certain populations, particularly people of color. And I believe that we can convey our support for our law enforcement without using that terminology. I would hate for us to pass a resolution that would be offensive to certain members of Washington County. So I would ask that we amend this and that we remove the designation back the blue as we pass this resolution.
Is that a motion? I have a motion to strike to back the blue. Is there a second? Having no second, that motion dies. I have to point out our astute and dedicated newspaperman, Tom Sissom, pointed out to me, line 46, we are missing a word. If you look at line 46, to tax to credit full-time law enforcement officers, I believe is what's needed there. Is that right? Tax credit, I'm sorry, after the word tax, we need to insert credit to full-time law enforcement officers. So I make a motion that we amend to add the word credit after tax on line 46. Do I hear a second? All those in favor? Aye. Okay, I'm moving back to the original motion. Do I have a motion to pass? I've lost track of where we're at. I have a motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Duncan. Second by J.P. Simons. Any further discussion? Any public comment? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? No. Item 21-R-10, item number 18 on our agenda, will move the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Our final item on the agenda tonight is public comment. We have a 12-minute comment period limited to 3 minutes per person. Public comment. State your name, where you're from.
Hi, Sarah Moore, Fayetteville. I understand that my public comment is standing between you and the door, but I just wanted to bring up what was brought up just recently by your colleague. She just told you, as the only one sitting at this horseshoe, as a person of color in this committee, that she found some of the text in what you're passing as a resolution that was possibly offensive and harmful. It stated violence towards a population in Washington County, and her words were barely listened to. That is incredibly concerning to me. I apologize to the people on YouTube that are watching, the people in the audience that don't feel supported. I hope that we will pause and have greater conversation on things like this, seeing that this was added at the last minute and that we thought it was important to pass it forward. It's important to have those conversations too about these topics, okay? So I'm incredibly concerned at the speed that was pushed through, and I apologize to you, J.P. Washington, and thank you for bringing that forward.
Public comments. Seeing none, this meeting's adjourned. No, it's adjourned. You guys got to be quick. It's adjourned.
No. Wow. Oh. Thank you. I just wanted to finish off in saying that I had a volunteer that came in today from Lincoln. She had open heart surgery back in June of this year, and she couldn't wait until the doctor cleared her so she can be able to come back